Friday mailbag, more Archie talking tight ends. And is Mike Ekeler a future head coach?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. You made it through another week of the offseason. You only have one more week remaining of that.
Holy
one more
smokes.
full week remaining of that, I suppose. I'm Connor Hamper, Mitch Sherman. Let's fire right into this thing. The mailbag on a Friday. Thank you for all the questions, as always. We begin with Zizak in Central City, Nebraska. Hello,
That's what
Zizak.
he wanted to be. It was a special request to use that name.
Between the three tight ends, who gets the most yards, receptions, and touchdowns? A fascinating question.
Yeah. I will say that Luke Lindenmeyer gets the most receptions. Heinrich Harburg gets the most yards. No, Heinrich Harburg gets the most touchdowns. And Carter Nelson gets the most yards. How about that?
Interesting.
Nelson
Gosh,
yards, Lindenmeyer receptions, Harburg touchdowns.
I'm inclined to pick one person for all three.
Right.
And I guess the odds-on favorite would be Lindenmeyer. But Carter Nelson might not be a bad pick there. I don't think it'll be Heinrich. I'll say that. I guess we'll find out very soon into the season what his role looks like. But I just, I can't trust that. So let's go with Lindenmeyer, the safe pick.
I have Heinrich as a goal line weapon, Carter as a big play threat, and Lindenmeyer as the steady picking up yards.
Very well could be three different people. That might not be a bad call.
Another tight end question from Maggie. Great show. My question is, who is the number 2 tight end?
That depends on who the number 1 tight end is. I think the number 1 tight end is Luke Lindenmeyer, and I think the number 2 tight end is Carter Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know that there'll be a distinction. I think the depth chart is going to have an or there.
Yeah.
Between Nelson and Harburg, and it really just depends on the situation that you're in. Who plays more reps? I mean, that could be the answer to the number 2. I'll say Carter Nelson plays more reps. So yeah, I'm in step with you on that.
I think they're just different. I mean, they're just such vastly different players that, although they play the same position, you have to sort of approach them a little bit differently. So like you said, I think it might be difficult to tell at times. But that's how I would line them up. Like if this was a NCAA college football video game, Lindenmeyer would be the first one.
Yeah, I think he's going to start on August 28th. Like if they open, I'll predict this. They're going to open the season in a 2 tight end set. So the first play of the first game, Nebraska they'll be in 12 personnel. So 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. Pretty basic, but something that I think you can expect to see. It's something I think you can expect to see a lot of this year, as long as everybody's healthy.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that one all breaks down. And remember, they already lost a tight end in Mac Markway, who would have factored into the equation, I think, too.
Right.
Let's go to Matt in West Omaha. Do you think that Mike Ekeler is head coach material? Has he ever expressed interest in being a head coach?
I think he's expressed interest in everything. If you talk to Mike Ekeler long enough, you're going to hear a little bit of on all subjects. So, okay, so just about every head coach, like you get into the business and you dream of being a head coach. Like there are very few coaches who just look at it and say, no, I'm cut out to be an assistant coach. Like, you don't want to be an assistant manager at your job. You want to be the boss. And in college football, there is lots of incentive to aspire to be a head coach because of the money that those positions demand and warrant. Command. I look at Mike Ekeler as like perfect for the spot that he's in and in coaching some aspects of defense. I sometimes think that like his brain probably just like moves too fast from one subject to the next for him to thrive in the role of a head coach. Like I don't look at him as a future head coach. No, I look at him as
I don't either.
Longtime special teams coordinator and maybe a defensive coordinator at some point, at some stop. But no, I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that he wouldn't. He's not aspiring. He may very well maybe on his goal sheet.
Yeah, like you said, I just think that role, especially nowadays, is just so big, it's so all encompassing. It's everything. And I think he's a really good like person to have playing his role, doing his job. So I've never viewed him that way. I don't know if he's expressed interest, like you said. I'm sure all coaches set out on that path, like, hey, I could do this. But sometimes, I mean, he didn't think that he was going to be a special teams coordinator either. And he turned out to be a really good one. So that's, sometimes things change along the ride.
Let's go to Brandon in Lincoln. He says, love the show. Been listening to Locked On podcasts from the beginning, as I'm the rare Utah Jazz fan in Lincoln.
Whoa.
That's a shout out to David Locke, founder of the Locked On Podcast Network and host of Locked On Jazz, also
Our
the
guy.
voice of the Jazz. So Brandon's question: what are the most and least likely season individual records by a player to fall this season? So I went through and I limited it somewhat. Like, you could really get in the weeds here and start looking at like touchdowns scored and 100-yard games and all of that stuff. And there's probably some things out there that are a little more insignificant as far as records go. I kept it to like the three main records on the offensive side, individual season. And then we'll just pick from these three as far as what's most likely. So I'll throw it out there first to you, Connor. The rushing record for a season is Mike Rozier, 2,148. The passing record for a season is Joe Gans, 3,568. And the receiving record for a season is Trey Palmer, 1,043.
I can tell you that the least likely is the 2,100 yards by Mike Rozier. That will not be getting broken this year.
Clearly.
Maybe as a team, maybe. But that will not be getting broken this year. So that's the least likely. You could convince me there's a world where Dylan Raiola throws for 3,500 yards. I mean, he threw for 28 last year, and it wasn't even, it was substandard from his standpoint. Sort of depends on how much they air it out in game situations and stuff like that. Remember, they had to throw a lot in 2008.
If Dylan plays in 13 games, that'd be 275 yards a game would break the record. If he played in 14 games, 255 would break the record.
Yeah, I mean, would you, could he have a 400-yard passing day this season? To bump that, like maybe. So you could convince me of that, but the most likely one to be broken is the just over 1,000 receiving yards record. It's that way every year. Trey Palmer did it in 2022, and that would be the most likely to get broken. So I would go in reverse order. I would go receiving, passing, and then rushing from most to least. Exactly.
And by the way, playing in 14 games would require Nebraska to either be in the playoff or to make the Big 12, the Big 12, the Big 10,
Big 12.
What conference is Nebraska in? The Big 10 championship. We got a bonus from Brandon too.
Okay.
He says, who are the most likely future NFL players on the team other than Dylan Raiola?
Wow. Let's see. I think Dane Key will probably play in the NFL. I think it's possible that Sierra Wright might get a hack. Andrew Marshall might get a hack. Let me look. Who's some younger guys that we could project?
I look at, Yeah, I mean, I think Barney's got a chance to play in the NFL for sure. Like as a weapon, special teams, offensive guy. And Tank Dell is the comparison that people have made, that Dana Holgerson has made. And Tank visited practice last week, and in a picture standing next to Ja'Cory Barney, you might have questioned which one of those two was the NFL
Pretty
player. Cool. But yeah. Riley Van Poppel, I think, looking at him physically and where he's at as a sophomore, there's a couple of linemen I'd probably put on there. Rocco Spindler. I think Elijah Pritchett's going to play in the NFL. I think there's several others who have a chance. Justin Evans, Henry Lutovsky. I mean, pretty much Nebraska's whole starting line has a chance to play in the NFL. I don't know about Teddy Prohaska because of all the injuries that he's had, but even Gunnar, you go to a guy like Gunnar Gatula, a lot left to do at the college level. I'd look at like Vincent Shavers and say he's got a chance. You go really young, and what we're hearing about Isaiah Mosey, like, okay, yeah, he's got a chance to play in the NFL, but he has never played in college. So, and obviously we're omitting Archie Wilson, who's basically already in the NFL.
That's right, according to Australians, which is good. Let's go to. Should we do one more here for a break?
Yeah, let's get Vince and then go to the break.
All right, here we go, Vince. Happy Friday, fellas. Thanks again for having me on your airwaves, our podcast airwaves. I'm going to air a random grievance aimed at drive-by analysts. While Nebraska football has not won a national title since 97 and a conference title since 99, I take issue with those who assert that Nebraska has either been irrelevant or has done nothing since those times. Between 2000 and 2016, Nebraska won at least 9 games 12 times. In those 17 years, including 8 wins in 05 under Bill Callahan, Nebraska also played in 4 conference title games from 06 to 12. I would hardly look at that as being irrelevant or doing nothing. From 2017, however, to present, I cannot argue that Nebraska has been subpar. Do you have a similar distinction when you think about? Yes. I think that's exactly right. I mean, Nebraska has gone
exactly right.
That's exactly right. It's gone less than 500 in every season except for last year, and every year since 2017. So that's a different era of Nebraska football. I would actually probably end it in 14. Even with the 16 year where they were 9-4. 7-0 at one point.
When you lose 62-3 in a season, you're not in the conversation.
So I would say like decade, relevance. Like the last decade has been the decade of crap.
Yeah. That's why I'm throwing out 16, because they lost 62-3 at Ohio State that year. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's easy to just categorize Nebraska as irrelevant over the last 25 years because of the conference championship drought, but from 2000 to 2014. As you classified it, Connor, Nebraska, I can look up the numbers. Maybe we'll do that and mention it next week, but in the top 20 in wins for sure, which is not irrelevant at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, let's take a quick break. More questions from you on a Friday edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast next.
Right now, a message from Wayfair. As the summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into a routine that you love. And Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season that is coming. From bedding and linens to storage solution for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. Recently, I found myself having to help outfit a college dorm room for a member of my family who will be moving out of the house. That's today, by the way, that's happening on this Friday. So we had some success shopping on Wayfair. It's convenient. It's easy to find the items that you like. Delivery is fast and free. Now is the perfect time to get your home or your home away from home ready, whether that's through organizing, upgrading workspace, or making weeknight dinners easier because of all of the furnishings around you. Get organized, get refreshed, get back to the routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Okay, welcome back. Friday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mailbag, we are well into it. Mitch Sherman Connor Happer with you. We go to Dom in Millard. He asks, how much of an addition will Williams Nwaneri make? Do you think he will have a starting role? And we're talking about this year, 2025.
Yeah, I think, as we've talked about before, that defensive line, we're just going to play a lot of guys. So it's very possible that, a guy is in a feature role, like a big role for the team, but he's not a starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll play a lot. That's the way it looks as of right now. And if he gets comfortable and settles in, then yeah, he could absolutely make a difference on this team. I think that's the hope. He get his feet wet a little bit and build off of 1 week from another.
I think he'll play.
Yeah.
And that was made clear when John Butler fielded a question about Nwaneri playing this year. And he said, yeah, he's going to play. How much, it will depend on his ability to be consistent, to bring that consistency to practice with the same kind of purpose and motivation and intensity that Nebraska wants to see. And you heard from Phil Snow the other day, an interesting conversation. He talked about the young players and some of the guys on the team who have basically seen the writing on the wall that they are not black shirts, talking about the defense. And his job, Snow's job, is to make sure that those guys don't allow this year to become a lost season where they fail to get better through the year. Like, just because you're not getting a ton of snaps, it doesn't mean that you should be any less intent on improving every day out there on the practice field. And like that's Williams Nwaneri right there, because I don't see him as a starter on August 28th. But if he is of the mindset that he is going to get better every week, then you may get to midseason and like one injury, or it may not even take an injury. Like if the talent really starts to rise to the top, he could break into the starting lineup at that point, just because like the everything has clicked. So it's very much up to be determined. How he's going to react when he gets an opportunity. So we'll see. But yeah, I think he's going to make an impact. How much, we'll find out.
Here's Jeff. He writes in 1992, Nebraska played a game in Tokyo. As a resident of Osaka, hello, drop a pin. I'd love to see the team return to Japan for a game someday. If you could watch a Husker game in any city in the world, which city would you pick? Wow. Any city in the world?
You go
first.
You
working on the map?
I'm working on the map. I got to get the map transferred over to our file here. So where would you, sorry if the microphone was messed up there. Where would you like to watch a Nebraska football game if you had your choice of everywhere on Earth?
That's it. That's all I have. Earth.
Only Earth. We're not going off. We're not going off planet. Sorry.
Let me. I don't know much about, like, I've never traveled abroad. So it's hard for me to say. I'm sure the game
Melbourne, Australia.
There you go. Hey, there you go. Get one for Archie in a couple of years here. Maybe like Hawaii or something like that. Yeah.
I thought of that. When I was loading this question in. I'd love to see him play in London, to be honest, because like it's a football destination and there are NFL games there multiple times every year. So the fans understand how to treat the game. Like the British, they get it. Yeah. I think it'd be really cool to see a Nebraska game there. I mean, we had Dublin, which is like geographically close to that, but it's a world different, I would say, if you ask the people in that part of Europe.
No doubt about it. That's cool. Did we get the map?
I did. Yeah, it's loading in. Let's go to the next question and we'll get to it.
Here's Ed. When a player goes down with a season-ending injury like Bly Hill or Mac Markway, do the powers that be pull up players 106 and 107 to fill in?
No, that's not the way that it's working right now. So right in previous years, yes, you'd have a 105. Some years it was 110 who could report to camp, and camp is ending on Saturday. And at that point, in every year you would expand to your full roster. But in August, if a player got hurt, early August, if a player got hurt, yes, you could bring in somebody who didn't make the camp roster to replace them. And it didn't need to be a season-ending injury. It could be something where they were hurt for a week and you bring in a replacement. But there is none of that. There is no camp roster now with the roster limits.
It's just your roster.
Yeah, it's just your roster. The whole roster is in camp. So there's nobody else to bring in when Markway and Hill got hurt. They are all here.
Let's get a couple more in this segment. Here's Shane in Columbus. The preseason Big Red Kool-Aid is being slathered all over the offensive line again. Will
Gross.
This be another year of disappointment, or will the line be able to grade out at least a B level? I mean, I am buying the hype on the offensive line. In past seasons, I haven't necessarily been there, but I'm just going off of what I see from like a depth perspective and a talent perspective up front. And I just think, like I've said before, I think you got solid guys there. You have depth behind them. You got some young guys coming up who are pushing, guys coming back from injury. They're not overly dependent on one guy existing or being there. I'm in on the offensive line.
Yeah, I don't know what else needs to be said. I think the offensive line is good. I think it's a strength of the offense, maybe the whole team. So they're no matter what you want to slather all over them, I don't believe it's going to be a disappointing year, Shane. I B level at least, yes, by the time that this thing's over. Break, right. And then we'll come back with the map.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take a quick break. We do have some Archie questions, of course. We'll get to those, and we'll take a look at where our pins are this week after this. But first, a word from our friends from the FanDuel Sportsbook, where summer, yes, indeed, is winding down. There's still baseball every day, golf, soccer, whatever you would like to go in on. FanDuel's got you covered there. And yes, even if you're a true sicko, preseason football is out there for you as well. But before you know it, week 0 will be here for college football. You're going to want to get in on this action from the FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make the ever famous same game parlay, which works for you. You can work that in any sport you'd like to. If you got an edge on something, use it, bet live. It's all there for you on FanDuel. So here's your incentive. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. Just win that first bet. Take the layup, baby. $5 buy-in gets you $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. In fact, now. Or visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you on a Friday. Thanks for being with us. Let's take a look at our maps. Mitch.
Yeah, we're going to do that. Maps right off the bat. Okay, here we go with the United States, our domestic map.
This is last week.
That's last week. Okay,
yeah.
Delete that. Here we go with our domestic map. There it is right there. Okay. Yeah, a little more full. You see Nebraska there in the middle with all the red pins. If you're not watching on YouTube, this is reason enough right here to come to YouTube, because look at this. Look at that right there. The world map. We're going to be adding a pin in Osaka, Japan next week because of that great question that we had today. So there it is. There's the maps. Thank you to Nathan, as always.
Yep. Well done. Thank you all. Let's continue on with our questions. This is from Patrick. No, Brendan.
Brendan. We're going Brendan.
Big fan of the show. I feel like there are some great nickname opportunities this year. The Crocodile Punter and Kyle the Cannon Cunanan. My question is, what are your favorite Husker nicknames of all time? That's good.
Do you have one? Do you have something that stands out?
I was just, my mind immediately went to like great names, the I am hips and the wonderful, terrific Mons of the world. Yeah. Those weren't nicknames. Those were their real names.
So the one that like became a trophy is the Jet, Johnny the Jet Rogers. And you have the Jet Award. Would you get some royalties for this, Michael? Like, we're talking about the Jet Award on the pod and nothing. Like, do we get anything for that? I think that's probably the winner. Turner Gill, Mike Rozier, Irving Fryer. They called them the triplets. You had like Derek Brown and Calvin Jones. They were the Weebacks. Those are the multiplayer nicknames. But I just really don't know how you can do better than Johnny the Jet Rogers.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
you have
never
Lyle
been, like-
Bremser on the punt return in the 71 Oklahoma game, belting out that name.
Just tore him loose from their shoes. I just like, they need a guy on defense that we can like nickname like the Eliminator or something like that. But I just don't know how that would ever. It has to be organic. But I like what Brendan's cooking here. Crocodile Punter.
Punter is great. Yeah,
pretty interesting. So
it's way better than the punter from down under because that's been used like a billion times. There are Aussie punters all over the place, and so it's that's not unique. That's not original.
We're going to keep an eye on some of those this year. Here's Patrick. Does it feel like the negative narratives, i.e. curses, close losses, etc., will begin to fade this year?
Yeah. Let's ask Mike Ekeler. We could go to the audio. No, we don't have the audio, but
the only curse I know about is making freaking game-winning field goals, baby.
That's right.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I think that Nebraska's working to put a lot of these negative narratives in the rearview mirror, but the refrain here and like what we'll continue to say is that until they go do it on the field, it's not truly in the past.
There's only exactly. There's only two options. Either you keep losing close games or you start winning them. So the narrative goes away when you start winning them, and maybe they've closed the gap enough for to make some of that go away this year. Here's Keegan with rev share and a need for stadium improvements. Do you think Nebraska would ever give up naming rights to Memorial Stadium for a cash infusion?
Well, initially I would say no, but it depends on how big the cash infusion is. If it's like to the tune of $300 million, the one that Kansas announced this week, then I think you would consider anything. I don't, Nebraska certainly has set a precedent for naming or renaming its venues, usually to honor great Nebraska coaches or usually coaches like the John Cook Arena over at Devaney. Tom Osborne Field. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely venues at Nebraska that are named after donors like the Hawks Championship Center or the Hendricks Center, where the basketball team practices. The basketball arena itself is Pinnacle Bank Arena. So there's a naming right in play. I feel like Memorial Stadium, that name is somewhat sacred, and I don't think it would ever go away. But maybe there could be a joint name, which I wouldn't love. But if it means that they're getting a nine-figure cash infusion, as you put it, Keegan, then I think it's possible.
I don't think they would go corporate with it, like you said, because just the optics of erasing Memorial Stadium for a corporate name is sort of bad. But I wouldn't close the door, like you said, on anything. Everybody's looking for new ways to sort of make money. Here's Logan in Lincoln. Hey guys, what kind of impact could a good or bad performance against Cincinnati be for the growing recruiting base in Kansas City?
The visibility is good. Nebraska's making ground in Kansas City for the first time in quite a while. It has targeted that area under previous coaching regimes and has never done the job that it's doing right now in getting its footing. And some of that is like at the grassroots level because Matt Rhule hired Jamar Mosey, who was a successful high school coach in Kansas City. And, he helped, of course, flip Isaiah, his son, from Oregon. That goes without saying, but they flipped Dawson Merritt from Alabama. They flipped Juju Marks from Kansas. And, the names just kind of go on from there. Nwaneri was somebody who played for Mosey in high school. Jameer Khan is a guy from Kansas City. Deshaun McCullough through the portal. Khan and McCullough, they came from Kansas City. So they'll continue to work that area. And yeah, if you go out at Arrowhead and you put up an impressive night, then absolutely it'll help with that visibility and that like cool factor for Nebraska football.
I don't think if it's bad and they lose, all of a sudden the well gets cut off or anything like that. But no, it doesn't help. I mean, but simply put, winning games is good and losing games is bad, regardless of where you're playing. Here's Riley in Potwin, Kansas. Last year, Coach Rhule had Bud Crawford come in as a motivational speaker. So who's joining him this year and for which game?
I think that maybe they'll do, if you're going to look at a game, you're probably going to look at the Michigan game to do something like that. Bud came in for the Colorado game last year. I think they're going to be really wary about putting all the marbles in around one game this season in the way that they did for CU last year. You saw how that played out in that, and it's flimsy. It's revisionist history to say, oh, the reason that Nebraska lost some of its juice in the middle of the season is because it put all the eggs in the basket in week 2 against Colorado. I don't know. I don't really that seems pretty soft. But if you build it up that much and you have Bud Crawford in the locker room pumping guys up at before the game and at halftime and leading them out of the tunnel, and then you come out and you play the rest of your games and you got none of that, it does send a subtle message to the players, I think. So I'm going to say that they don't. I'm going to say that they don't have a guest come in and give a motivational speech this year. But if they did, it would probably be against Michigan.
Somebody, some of it is circumstantial. Like, hey, if Sue's in town, have him come talk to the team. You know what I mean?
He did it
right?
in the Rutgers game last year. Yeah, when he was in town for right, exactly.
So maybe something like that happens again this time around.
They'll have a 95 reunion.
There you go.
The 30-year anniversary of the 95 team is I believe it's Michigan, the Michigan game. So maybe there's somebody from that team who will speak to the group. If it's Christian Peter, look out. Just hide all the breakable things in the locker room before he gets up on the stage.
Yeah, good call. Greg had Broken Arrow. Which is more important, win the games you're favored, or for this team this year, win a game in which you are the underdog?
They're both important. Nebraska has to get over the hump.
Yeah,
you want to say the underdog?
I would say win the games you're favored in. Okay, because Nebraska's gonna be favored in a lot of their games this year, probably. So I think for this team this year, you have to prove that you could do that on a consistent basis. They haven't done it at a high enough level over the last, the decade of suck that we just explained. So yeah,
I mean, absolutely. If you're picking between all of the games you're favored versus one in which you're the underdog, you want to win the games that you're favored in. But if it's a 1-versus-1 trade and you say, all right, would you trade a Michigan State loss for a win against Michigan? Yeah, I think so, because I think that win would go farther than the bad effect of losing one game where you're favored.
Let's do Michael in Alachua, Florida. He says, I've heard lots of mentions about the team's overall size and conditioning in comparison to previous years. Do you believe the change is more due to the athletes we're recruiting or due to the training table / strength and conditioning finally taking hold?
Yeah, this is year 3, and so they've had time now to get into Corey Campbell's system and to buy into all of the nutrition elements that this staff is selling and that Kristen Coggan is leading from her position. I think it's taken hold. I think it's about that. I mean, the recruiting has never really wavered that much over the years at Nebraska. So I think it has more to do with consistency in the program and players buying into to the resources that Nebraska has.
Yeah, you've been able to develop. I mean, pretty simple. So I wouldn't point to one single thing on that, but that's this staff's calling card. That's Matt Rhule's calling card, and they've been able to kind of stack it a little bit while adding the infusion of transfers every year. So I think it's probably a little bit of both, but they've done a nice job of stacking it, and they've created some nice depth. I think the best they've had certainly in a little while now for this team.
One more before the finish with Archie. So from Johnny, in light of Mitch hearing, quote, whispers around Nebraska's camp that Isaiah Mosey is going to be a special player by the time he leaves Nebraska, can you think of another true freshman that you heard was going to be a special player during spring or fall camp? and that player actually ended up being special at Nebraska.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I can think of a few.
Oh yeah.
Tommy Frazier, Amon Green, Ndamukong Suh. Like Nebraska's had plenty through the years where people took a look at him in camp before he'd ever played a game and just said, look out. Rex Burkhead, like from the day that he set foot on campus, you knew that guy was different. And that's not what I'm saying about Mosey. Like, don't put those kind of expectations on him. My point, and we said this, talked about this on the pod Thursday, is they really like him as a football player. Like they think that he just has an it factor and that he is going to be very good by the time he leaves Nebraska.
Yeah,
if not early in his career.
Usually end up, producing. So that's kind of the story there. There's been plenty that have gone the other way too. There's been plenty as like the coaching staff said, hey man, watch out for this guy. And then they transferred after a year or something like that. So you never know how it's going to go, but you could usually tell kind of early.
Absolutely. Okay, let's finish this up with a flurry of questions about Archie Wilson, the punting sensation, viral global sensation that is Nebraska's freshman from Melbourne, Australia. From Paul in Pennsylvania. Mitch, in reference to the Archie Wilson interview, have you ever accidentally made yourself cry during an interview, or are you incredibly good at keeping it together? I have never cried myself as I ask questions. I mean, there's times where things have been emotional for sure. But I've generally kept it together. Good on Archie though for showing his emotional side, and he didn't. That wasn't like a choice that he made. It just happened. From Angus, how hard is it to get Husker Nation in line to chant the Wales rugby chant for every punt down inside the 10? So I looked this up to try to figure out what this was, and the best I can come up with is that he's talking about the Welsh rugby anthem, and I don't know it. Maybe some people do. I don't think you're ever going to be able to get the Nebraska fans to chant the Welsh rugby anthem unless it's like something that I'm totally missing here. And Archie played Australian rules football. Yeah, he punts with the rugby style, but he's definitely not from Wales.
There's some juice behind him though, and people will definitely rally around him. But I think it's more of a
Aussie, something like that.
Yeah, maybe you can get one of those going. Scott in Windsor, Ontario, weekly mailer to the mailbag. Here we go. Choose your Archie, Arch Manning or Archie Wilson.
More important to his team's success and failure is the question from Scott. Sorry, it's Arch Manning. I know this question was somewhat in jest. Like we're talking, Archie Wilson can have a big impact on Nebraska, but it's not going to be the same level as Arch Manning at Texas. We don't need to go any farther on that. And a bonus question from Scott to end the show. Since O linemen can't get single-digit jerseys, could they be awarded a double single-digit, like 55, 66, or 77? Scott says, Mitch, I elect you to bring this up with Coach Rhule.
It's not a bad idea. I mean, you could kind of denote it that way. I always said, like when Piper got it a couple years ago, I was like, give him a sticker or something, or some sort of patch, that denotes that he's one of those guys.
Yeah, the thing about the single digits is like it's known. It's known like just like part of the lore around the program. So you see that one digit on the back of a jersey, and oh, that guy's a dude. Like he's respected by his teammates at a high level. So you're probably like not ever going to really think that if you see just the average person is watching a Nebraska game and you see somebody in 55 or 66, like that doesn't look any different than 57 or 68.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for once again submitting your questions to this week's mailbag. We look forward to continuing these throughout the season and beyond. Appreciate you this week, and we'll do it all again next week, our final full week of the off season. That's it for us today. If you missed anything, or thanks for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Portal Show with Brian Smith. Find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.